So what I want to do on this is I want to go to I want to go back to our map that we had here that we went through last week. And yeah, get this straightened around so you can all see it. Take that off the screen. There you go. Okay, so we're at right now we're at verse 25 in our study. And last week we went through kind of went through an overview of the entire study, and I'm not going to take you through this again, but we're at verse 25 as an explanation of verses 11 through 12, where then those are the verses where Daniel saw the vision, and we're getting down to the latter part. So it's so disconnected every time we come back to this. It's hard to get that connection. So I'm just going to take you back. I'm not going to take you through the whole thing, but I just want to take you up to this part that we're at verse 25. And so it starts off here with the verse 3 about Daniel lifting up his eyes. He saw this ram that had two horns, was the Persian Empire, saw it pushing westward, northward, and southward. And in the middle of the what he saw and what the explanation was, he talked about the question about how long was this vision, and the vision concerned the plundering of the Holy Land and Jerusalem. So that is constant throughout. And you'll see that throughout here. And then we start off here with the next part of it in verse 5. We saw this goat coming from the west on the face of the whole earth. And we see that was the goat was the Alexander the Great, as is explained to him later. But it starts off with his father Philip of Macedon. And this shows the country of Macedon, the Persian Empire right across there, and they pushed westward. Started off in about 352 or so, as far as Alexander's father was concerned. And then the next one we show where the push of Alexander the Great went eastward, and came from the west going east, and pretty much the reverse of the Persian Empire. And throughout all of this is how long the vision. Israel is trampled by all of these empires and countries. Then we go to verse 8, that the he-goat waxed very great. When he was strong, the great horn was broken, for it came up four notable ones, and that is the Seleucus Ptolemy that we talked about in our class this morning about the discovery of these coins, and of course Lysimachus and Cassander. Antigonus was of the family of Alexander the Great. The generals were not. It was not of his own that these countries were divided. But Antigonus almost got the empire back again. He fought with these other generals, but was unsuccessful. Lysimachus is the focus. It's in this area, right around Pergamum and in the area of Greece. And Lysimachus and his descendants willed the land to Rome, willed his portion to Rome. So the next slide, we see where Lysimachus is gone, and the Antigonus almost, he gained a part of the empire back, but we note the land that Lysimachus had control over is not part of that empire, because actually Rome is moving in there, as the next slide shows. And this is where verse 9, out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land, toward the east, and toward the south, toward the pleasant land here. And in the latter time, we're told in verse 23, where it kind of explains verse 9 explains the vision. And he says, the angel told Daniel, in the latter time of their kingdom, when transgressors are come to the fold, speaking about the transgressions of the subject matter, which is Israel, has come to the fold. And so we see one of the great onslaughts against the temple and the city by Antiochus IV Epiphanes in BC 167. We're moving down. The Seleucids have lost a lot of their territory. By this time, they're moving into these parts and into closer to where the Romans are going east. The Seleucids are gradually moving more westerly, and their Seleucids and the Ptolemies are always in battle against each other, with Israel in the middle of it, getting the worst of it. And then we see the Romans pushing further and further. In verse 23, talks about a king of fierce countenance, understanding dark sentences shall stand up. And that is this little horn developing and pushing further and further until it makes a turn and starts going south. And we're now down about 56 BC before Christ. And this king of fierce countenance shall stand up. And we see him now fully developed in about Christ's time. And in AD 70, there's this strike against the temple in AD 70. And that takes us to verses 10 to 12 of the vision. It says it waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the host of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Yea, he magnified himself even to the prince of the host, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away. The place of his sanctuary was cast down. And the hymns here is not a person, but it's a power and a place. And of course, these powers and places go over a long period of time, and it's occupied by many different people. At this particular time, it was by Vespasian, was the one in charge of that power. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. He shall destroy wonderfully, and shall prosper and practice, shall destroy the mighty and the holy people. And here we see the empire at its zenith in about AD 117, and still, how long the vision? Israel is still trampled. And I should say that we see the papacy being established here in Rome, the other little horn of the west, with its eyes and mouth that spake great things, and it is established by this time. And then we get down to where we're at right now in our 25th verse. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand. And again, the he here is not a person, it's a power. It's that power that was spoken of Deuteronomy, that if Israel didn't obey the commandments, that he would send this foreign power against them. And this power will cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. And of course, the policy we're talking about here, and what we really need to emphasize here, is that we see the little horn here, and we see another one, which is the dragon. We've been reading about that in Revelations chapter 12 and onward, which is the symbol of the military power of Rome, the political and military power. And both these symbols share the same thing. They both mean the same thing. The little horn of the goat was Daniel's way. It was the way it was expressed to Daniel, and the dragon was the way it was expressed to John in Revelations. They both are referring to the same thing. That's why we have both symbols there. And they had a policy. It says a policy of the emperors who ruled from Constantinople in the east, particularly, and it was ultimately to give power to the papal office in Rome. And we see that happening here, especially in the decline of the western portion of that empire, the western wing of the empire, when the Vandals and the Visigoths were imploding upon the Eastern Empire, the Western Empire, especially the invasions of all these smaller empires, the Vandals, the Goths, the Franks, and so on. And so in order to help the power in Rome, the dragon gave its power. It gave help to Rome. And that was part of the policy, that they were to ultimately give power to the papal office in Rome. And that's talked about in Revelations chapter 13, where the dragon helped the beast, which is Rome. And that takes us to where we're at right now in considering this verse 25. And that's we're at now at AD 395 to 480. And that is where the Western Roman Empire basically declined. That by 476, the Goths were in power, and Western Rome was no longer a part of the Roman Empire. And we see that from the next slide here. In AD 600, the Western Roman Empire was dissolved. And that brings us to the emperors Justinian and Phocas. And they gave permanent power to the papal office by their decrees that lasted until 1870. And that takes us to our study here, where we're talking about this policy of the emperors. The rule from Constantinople was to give power to the papal office, and that was the Pope that presided over what was left of the Western Roman Empire. And without that military support, this Pope was virtually powerless. But he had the support and the authority of this military component of the Eastern Empire supporting him. And the next part of that verse in Daniel 8, verse 25, says that through his policy, that is his policy of giving power to the Pope, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. So the craft to prosper, and in verse 12, it talks about the casting down the truth, and this happened by supporting the papacy. The emperorship was supported by the Eastern military power, and it caused the craft to prosper. It's the word meaning fraud and deceit, referring to false religion. And that's what cast truth down to the ground. So what we're saying here is that this king or this emperor, the power that in the East, this Greco-Roman power supported the papacy, and that was the architect of the fraud. And therefore, it could accurately be said that the policy came out of Constantinople. It's like a perfect storm of deceit. So we'll pause here. If there's any comments or questions, I think we had a hand up here from the Richard Hall.
Hello, Ed, it's Clinton. So we're talking about this little horn that comes off the goat. And there's also a little horn in Revelations that is on the beast, which has 10 horns, and then a stout little horn comes up and plucks up 3 of those. And these are not the same little horn that becomes great, are they?
No, that's right. This slide shows the 2 horns here. That's it's talking about the Eastern and the Western part of the Roman Empire. The little horn was the ecclesiastical little horn. It was the horn of the beast of the sea, which was relating to the development of the papal wing of it. And the other little horn and the dragon was the military and political power that basically helped the emperor and the Pope in the West. And that also answers to the 2 legs of the 4th beast dominion of Nebuchadnezzar's image.
Yeah, it's awesome here. I just have a quick comment, and then Brother Dan, or comment or question, and then Brother Dan had one as well. I was just gonna mention, just for sake of like clarity and things, so we have Western Rome is kind of declined because we have all these Goths and barbarians kind of invade from the north on their northern border that they never conquered. So if you look on the map that Ed has, well, even that one's fine too. You have like just above where like the Italian boot comes up, you have like all these other names up there. Those are all essentially like little Gothic kingdoms or barbarian kingdoms, they would call them, that lived up in France and Germany. And but even by the time of like Rome's like the biggest its empire ever got, it never conquered those tribes. And then when it got weak, all those Gothic and barbarian tribes came down and destroyed Rome. So that's why the Western Roman Empire was eventually destroyed. But then, so you still have the eastern side, you still have Justinian over there in Constantinople. He's like the other half of Rome. And so for quite a while, the Pope and his power is like gone almost, because, you know, Western Rome is gone. It got conquered by all these Goths. So Justinian actually has to march armies over to Italy to kick all the barbarians out, and then he sets up the Pope again. He doesn't necessarily restore the Western Roman Empire. Like there is no longer a Colosseum, there's no longer all these like Roman troops with big red shields necessarily, but there is the Pope set up there, and he's just supported by Justinian. So really the only power left of Rome that really has the power to do stuff is over in Constantinople. There is no classic Rome necessarily that we think about left anymore, but we still have the Pope over there. So just a little, you know, a little further explanation in case anybody was kind of wondering. And then my other question was kind of relating to Glennon's question, because Glennon, you had asked if that little horn was related to the Pope. I think I'm characterizing that right. Like the one from Revelations is also relating to the Pope. And I thought I remember reading or maybe listening to an explanation either by Thomas or Mansfield, which I thought he said that was related to the coming up of the Pope, and the three little horns that the little horn and the dragon of Revelations took down was three kingdoms in Italy that were used to like form kind of, you can almost say like the kingdom of the Pope or his area. So I kind of thought that the little horn that comes up in this chapter and the little horn of Revelations are kind of both still related to the Catholic power, but maybe at different times. I don't know. That's just kind of like question / comment, I guess I have. And Brother Dan has a comment here too.
It's more of a question comment. I had heard one time the easiest way to remember the beast and the dragon was that the beast was the Roman Empire, the empire of the Roman Catholic system, and the dragon was the Grecian part of it, the Greek Orthodox, which would have entailed the king of the north and all his power. And so I'm a little bit confused, I guess. So the question would be, when you said the beast was given power by the dragon, in my mind, when I picture it, I see the beast was given the papacy was given power by the Greek Orthodox, the king of the north, the military side of the image that stands. So we have one foot standing on the Russian, we want to call it the Russian, but everything that goes with the Russian side of things, the king of the north. The other leg stands on the religious side, which is the papacy, and they work together at the end to stand up to come against Christ. It's the way I've always seen it, and it was the easiest way to describe it. But this seems to be placing the beast and the dragon both in relation to Roman Catholic instead of Greek Orthodox. So just trying to sort that out.
I can kind of answer that really quickly. He kind of does get, or the beast gets power from the dragon, because like you said, the dragon's over on like the side of Russia and all that stuff, because it started in Greece and Constantinople, so that's why it's the Greek Orthodox Church. And then later when the Muslims invaded, they like pushed up north and eventually it became like the Russian Orthodox Church. But when you have like Justinian and those guys sitting over there in the east, they're still the dragon. But you remember the Western Roman side got taken out by all these barbarians and stuff. So it was actually the eastern side that had to come over and give the Pope his power back, right? Because he'd been taken out. Does that make sense, or you got make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I'm just, it's still in my mind, it's still the dragon and the beast is two separate things but working together in a sense. Because it's always in Revelation, you see the number of the beast is 666, relating to the Roman Catholic system.
Mhm.
But it's still the Greek, and when you see what's going on in Russia today, the Greek Orthodox influence that's working with the Russian king in the north.
So like,
They're together, but they're not together. They're talking about meeting, they're talking about having, things to work together again. And so I see this image, one he's standing in, but the two sides of the Roman Empire.
so we should be expecting to see the Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches unite a little bit more and connect. Sorry, Ed, we're kind of taking over. Brother Sid has a comment here.
That's quite okay. We're getting Revelations and Daniel kind of tied together here, and we have to be careful not to get confused by those two books. There was two beasts, or there was a dragon and the beast in Revelations, speaking about the same thing, and that's where we get this image of and to get the equivalent of that in Daniel, we got to go to chapter 7, which talks about the development of the Western Roman Empire, and it talked about the beast that was the papacy. And then we go to chapter 8, and it focuses more on the Eastern, and its equivalent of the dragon is the little horn of the goat. And those two they're basically referring to the same thing. The Revelations version is the dragon, and the Daniel version is the little horn of the goat. That's why I put those two in there.
Yeah, Brother Sid here, just thinking back to the maps that you've had up there over the last few minutes, that Straits of the Bosporus is a highway by which a lot of those conquests have taken place, and probably down the valley of the Euphrates and into the Middle East by that means. And in the map that you've got up there, we see that the Western Roman Empire was isolated out there. They didn't have access to the Bosphorus, and of course they didn't have the military power. And Brother Austin mentioned a few minutes ago about the Muslims coming in, and they tried to get into that land going through Constantinople, but the Eastern Roman Empire was established there and repulsed them. So their alternate route was to go around through the north of Africa and come up across Gibraltar and up into Europe from the southwest. And so you can see the power of possession of the of Constantinople and the Straits of Bosporus there, and why it is that Russia has to come down and get into Turkey and take possession of that, because it's not exactly a land bridge, but it's very close to being a land bridge there. And so that is the other reason why the Eastern Roman Empire had to lend itself to the Western Roman Empire to protect it. And I think we will, as Brother Austin was saying, we need to watch for that cooperation to grow between the two of them. Seems like your comments there about the difference between Daniel and Revelations on this almost seems like the symbolism in one was speaking to more of the political aspect of what was going on there, and in Revelations the idea of the Western Roman Empire being the dragon was because of the religious influence of paganism on the church. Seemed like that was more of an ecclesiastical kind of a symbolism than the one in Daniel.
Yeah, there was, yeah, and you mentioned it was the Western Roman Empire that was the dragon. It's actually was the Eastern Roman Empire, the dragon, and the beast of the sea was the Western Roman at the time. That's in Revelations 13. So we'd get, that's it. The reason, we might ask, well, why did they use all these beasts and images to just makes things confusing, but it's just like a picture is worth 1,000 words, they say, and that's why they use these images and beasts, because it is complex. There's a lot of history involved, and the Bible, God has presented us with these images, and once we get a basic idea of what the image is, then there's so many details that can be extrapolated from them that have meaning, and that's why we have these beasts used. And of course, sometimes it takes 1,000 words to explain what it is if we're not aware of the symbol. In any case, I thank everyone. We're at our end of our time, and we will have to conclude. And Brother Reagan, can I get you to lead us in a word of prayer, please?
Yep. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. As we come to you at the end of our hour of study, and we thank you for giving us this opportunity to be able to study your word, your ways, your prophecies, signs of the times, and how they relate to us, and help us to prepare ourselves for the soon return of your Son. We pray that you please be with us as we go about and prepare ourselves for the memorial meeting. And we thank you for this time through your Son, Lord Jesus Christ. Amen.